Welcome back to the Legacy of Star Wars, your one-stop shop for all things Star Wars. And tonight we are going to discuss just a little bit of a controversial topic. I think whenever you're talking Disney Plus and Star Wars, you're probably prepared for the worst. But what we did is we took six of our staff members and we got them to rank every single Disney Plus Star Wars TV show, meaning it had to have come out after the Disney Plus inception. There are 16 of them when you include the different seasons. So what we did is we ranked them 1 through 16. If you had something at 16, it got 1 point. If you had something at 1, it got 16 points. But without further ado, the panel for this evening. First up, he's a co-host here. He's probably sad the Acolyte's gone. Not sure what else he's doing at the moment. It's Kieran. What's going on, man? Not sure what else he's doing at the moment.
I'm getting you in reverb here. I don't do anything. I don't do anything. If it's not with Sean, I just sit here and wait for the next podcast for like a week.
You just don't move. You just sit right in that spot. Just
yeah, I eat and drink here, and I pee over in the corner there. Yeah, I don't do nothing.
Also, for those of you that might be tuning in that aren't just Star Wars fans, we are recording a SummerSlam preview tonight that will be available tomorrow morning on our Fandom Haven channel, and we'll share that around. And we've got some predictions, and we'll see who comes out on top and who's made to look like an idiot, aka probably me, by the end of it. Also joining me this evening, he is the co-host here at the Legacy of Star Wars. He's also been doing a lot of Westeros content with us, as has Kieran. It's Randy. What's going on, man?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Just kind of recovering from the weekend still a little bit, not much. Did a lot of walking at GalaxyCon in Raleigh. It was jam-packed, full of people. Temperature wasn't too bad, but at least, I got to have a little fun. Got to meet some people, got to chat with a couple of wrestlers here and there, and which was kind of cool. But other than that, man, yeah, I'm ready to do this. I'm curious to see what the rankings turned out, as considering there were 6 of us giving our opinions.
Hey, Kieran left the chair. That liar. Also joining us this evening, Andor hater himself. I swear it'll be the only time I bring it up. Fizz, what's going on?
Oh, you're lying, and we all know it. Not a whole heck of a lot's going on today. I feel like crap, but I'm here, and I am excited. So let's get down to business.
It almost looks like you're wearing a Death Star hat. If your head was a little higher on the screen, it would look like you're wearing a hat of the Death Star there. Yeah, let's get right into it because there's a lot to go over. Obviously, the higher up the list we go, more than likely, the more discussion will come in. There's some stats included with each one of these slides, so let's get into it. Coming in dead last, everyone's favorite, Star Wars Visions. That means it's 16th place. It netted an 11 of a possible 96 points, 0 first place votes, and the worst vote was unranked, meaning haven't seen it, and I believe there's a couple of people with that. Any thoughts on Star Wars Vision Season 2 for those of us that have seen it?
I know I have seen the first 2 episodes, and I thought they were okay. I just honestly, I pretty much the same thoughts I'm going to have on both seasons of Visions. I think I ranked them both near the bottom. It's fun to watch, and it's I think there's one episode that everyone was really excited about, or got a lot of buzz in the first season. But really, it's like for me, it's like I watched it. It was fun, but like no impact whatsoever no memorable moments, really, other than some of the like samurai inspired stuff, but nothing I'm gonna go back and like be like, oh yeah, I really love this, or I love this character, or whatever. It's mostly just kind of stuff. Like it's almost like things that people created on YouTube, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm never gonna watch it again, and I don't really, doesn't impact the lore or anything. Good job, guys. That's my feelings on Visions altogether.
I like what they were going for, but I almost wish they would have just done the like what Marvel did with the what if instead of Visions, and have it be a little more aligned. I think the problem with Vision season 2 is after the first one, it just seemed to scale off. I think season 2 has a story about a brother and a sister that I found very intriguing towards the end of it. But other than that, like, I have a hard time pulling very much at all from Vision season 2. It's not that they're not worth watching. Obviously, they're not canon stories, and there's some wonderful art done in a lot of those episodes that get away from that Rebels or more so like the Clone Wars and Tales of the Jedi and all that look. It's nice to see Star Wars done in some natural anime, um, but I guess I longed for something more, which I'm not alone on it because it scored a grand total of 11 of 96 points, meaning even one of us, if we had it high on our list, could have beat that 11 points by a sizable margin, and we didn't. My advice for anybody in terms of watching Visions is if you're not feeling well, much like Johnny isn't today, but you don't have anything to do and you're just kind of out of things to watch, turn it on. Some of them are going to miss. You're not going to, have your mind blown. But like I said, when I came to that brother and sister story there, where the sister ultimately has to go away because she's force sensitive in order to protect her, um, I related to that a bit. It's never easy saying goodbye to family or friends, and especially when it's not intended, but then it just sort of has to happen. So that one I related to, but other than that, I have a hard time picking anything from that second season.
It's kind of it's interesting. I wonder if we at some point, and this is probably a touchy subject, but just thinking about things that are canon and aren't canon and how that like impacts how popular it is to you. You know what I mean? Like people make a big deal out of things being canon, and I think that's why this probably misses for a lot of people. Whereas it's like, just because it's not canon doesn't mean you can't like it or you can't, it doesn't mean that it's not like it didn't happen. It's not real regardless. Like the stuff that's canon also never happened. So, but it's an interesting topic that I think this kind of brings up. Anyways, that's all my thoughts for Vision. So
Oh, I think it's a valid thought because it is a touchy subject for a lot of people because a lot of people like the older canon better than the newer canon. But then those people were told that you're never going to get more of that older canon because we've moved to new canon. And then all of a sudden they introduce these two new shows that don't touch on any of that canon. But guess what? They're not canon either. I see why some feathers were ruffled. But it is what it is.
be an
Let's
interesting topic for later.
for sure. Let's move on to number 15. And let me say, the only one I can really point out in this group that I'm greatly disappointed in, because I thought he would have helped boost the ranking of this show up a little bit, this particular season, is Randy. Randy, coming in at 15, is Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3, which, by the way, people, I think was far and away the best season. Keeping in mind, I've only seen like 7 episodes of Season 1 and 1 episode of Season 2, meaning I gave up on both before seeing them all the way through. Season 3, I actually watched all the way through. Um, 15th place, 26 of a possible 96 points, 0 first place votes, and the worst vote was an unranked, maybe multiple. To give you an idea how bad Vision Season 2 did, this beat Vision Season 2 by 15 points, which is more points than Vision Season 2 had entirely. Who has seen Bad Batch 3 here amongst the group other than Randy and I?
I have not. I'm halfway through season 2, and I'm pretty disinterested in Bad Batch altogether, which is weird because I like the characters and the team and everything. I thought it was going to be good, and really, I just could not get into it as much as I think I tried like 4 or 5 times to pick it back up, and just not interesting. I guess I'm just have a problem with the writing. It's just not for me.
I would agree with that in the first 2 seasons. I like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been forever since I watched it. The very first thing they did for Bad Batch was like that, like 60 or 70 minute movie that happens during Order 66, right? I believe when they debuted
Yep.
that, like I was
It
like,
was a
oh hey, this
two-episode
is. Oh, was it
premiere.
2 episodes? Okay, I was
Yeah.
like, hey, this is pretty good. This is cool. And then I watched it go like this in a hurry. And then my buddy Ian reached out to me and said, you should really give season 3 a shot because they're trying to add to the sequel trilogy in it. They're trying to explain some of the Palpatine stuff and how he's back. And another big thing, I think they introduced either at the end of season 1 or 2, is Mount Tantus, which becomes a pivotal point in season 3, which is from Star Wars Legends and the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the Thrawn trilogy. They never really dive as deep into it as you'd want them to, and it's definitely not the same thing as it was in Legends. But I found season 3 to be far more compelling to me than the previous two, and probably one of the reasons for that is I didn't find Omega annoying in season 3, but I definitely found her to be annoying in the first 2 seasons.
Who is
Rand
Omega? Are you talking about Omega?
Omega, yeah. Omega, I think was what most people call her, but doesn't the one refer to her as Omega?
I don't know. I know that's how she pronounces everything.
Um,
I like they have that shirt where it says all the names and it says it the way she says it. So it says like Reeker, Eco.
Randy, I don't have your list handy, but I want to say Bad Batch season 3 was significantly lower than the first two, and this kind of surprised me because I thought you were high on it.
Well, and that's why when I sent you my list, I said it was just it was rushed, so I didn't really give it much thought. I was just trying to throw stuff down there because you needed it. Um, but looking at my list, yeah, it probably should have been at least above season 2 for sure. I'm looking at it now, but ultimately, I think I also looked at it the different seasons as like which ones I kind of felt like I got it really excited for. I mean, I was excited for season 3, but like I just didn't want it. I was just bummed it was ending. So I think that's another reason why I kind of have it a little lower is that I really kind of wished it kind of would have gone at least one more season, but I get what they were doing and they did a great job of it. So obviously, like you had suggested, after we do this, go back and look at our rankings and see if there's anything that would change. And obviously, once I give it more thought, I'm sure this will be a lot higher than what it really is for me, right? In terms of where I put it.
Yeah, I was baffled to see Bad Batch season 3 come in behind the next one, which is 14th place, and that was Star Wars Visions season 1, netting 29 of a possible 96 points, zero first place votes, and the worst vote was again unranked. I think Kieran touched on it earlier. I think the episode's called either like the Ninth Jedi or the Seventh Jedi. Um, that it ended up getting like a book spin-off of it as well, and it's a really deep episode where you think everybody's Jedi but they really aren't. um and but again, after that it gets kind of thin. I know there's one where um like a father's trying to, actually I think that's that same one, the father saves the daughter to get her off the planet, and they end up on like this moon base, and that's where it all takes place. But other than that, Vision's I don't know, like what Visions could be has like so much potential, and I just feel like it was kind of mailed in ways. Anyone else have thoughts on Visions?
I actually kind of feel like the exact opposite. That I think there's a lot of cool effort put into it to make it a neat anime, and there's lots of really neat fighting in lots of the different ones, and they give it a really cool like different art, like anime styles. Like some of them, there's one episode where there's a really cutesy like Jabba the Hutt and Boba Fett or something like that, and lots of characters that we know, and they're just all like cutesy, and they look like I don't know. They look like Pokemon characters or something instead. But there's lots of different anime styles, so I think they put a lot of effort into it and getting different artists and getting different stories and having interesting things. But it doesn't really matter how much effort they put into it because you're telling people, like, hey, these are stupid little stories. And they're going, oh, okay, I don't need to watch that. Like, it's not important. There's so much Star Wars out there and so much Marvel out there and so much wrestling out there, and everything else that everybody is interested in that I don't need to really watch this. So I think no matter how good it is, it was doomed from the beginning in terms of viewership. I don't know if I don't think they were banking on this to be a big project anyways, but I don't think this could do better for people.
Anyone
Well,
else have thoughts?
I'll say one thing as I'll say one thing as someone who hasn't really watched these yet is the fact that they didn't really advertise it a whole lot. Like it would come out and then I would forget about it because something else was out or at the time, or I was into something else. But because I never really saw it on social media a whole lot. I saw a ton of Bad Batch stuff. They marketed the hell out of that. Even Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire, they marketed that stuff pretty well, but Visions, they really didn't do a good job of it. And it made me forget that it was even there until bringing it up recently. And I'm like, oh crap, I haven't seen these yet. I need to sit down and finally watch them.
Yeah, I guess when I seen Visions, it felt like the opportunity to bring some old legend stories to visual life, and it didn't happen. They were all original ones. Let's move on to what would this next one be? 13th?
Mm-hmm.
16, 13, 14. Yeah, so 13th
It's on the
is
screen.
the I can't see the I got something you guys don't have on my screen. 13th place
Okay.
is 30 of 96. Sorry. 13th place is the Bad Batch season 2. Sorry, my dog won't stop walking. The Bad Batch season 2, 30 of 96 points, 0 first place votes, but everybody had some sort of vote on it because it net a worst vote of 16th place. Thoughts on the Bad Batch season 2? I gave it dead last on my list. So
This is the one I gave up on, so I will leave it to Randy and Johnny to comment on.
I don't know how 16th is its worst place because I just looked. It's not on my list at all.
oh, might have missed that one, but either way, it wouldn't change the outcome.
No.
No, I mean
So,
for season
Randy,
2,
go.
I was gonna say for season
Nobody
2,
else likes it.
it wasn't bad. Obviously Omega's gets a little less annoying at times, but there's still a lot there that they kind of missed on that they really could have done a better job with. Obviously, I'm not since Kieran hasn't finished season 2 yet. I'm not gonna ruin the finale for him.
I haven't watched it yet. You can go ahead.
You trying to say you're gonna forget if I say something?
Yeah,
he's just jumping at the bit to watch it, man. You can see him. He's been
Yeah, I
stuck
know,
in
right?
that chair a week.
we haven't been podcasting very long together. I don't remember anything. Like, you can spoil or something. If I don't think I'm going to watch it in the next 6 weeks, I will forget anyways.
By 6 weeks, he means 6 minutes.
I mean, I think like the most emotional episode obviously is, the finale, which leads in very well to season 3 because, we lose one of the Bad Batch, and it's one of but that's the thing. The rest of the season, you didn't. I mean, they kind of foreshadowed it, but they did. It wasn't really. There was no real stakes until near the end, and this is one of those shows where we know these characters don't survive for the most part because they're not in we don't see them in the trilogy or anything like that, and just it's. I think that's kind of where I felt like we were going to start sooner with more emotion, with more high stakes stuff, and to wait to the end of season 2. I think that's kind of why, for me, it ended up being a little bit lower than most other shows.
All right, so it sucks. Moving on. Uh, Coming in at 12th place is the first season of the Bad Batch, netting a 34 of a possible 96 points. 0 first place votes. Worst votes listed as 15th, but that could be wrong if I missed Johnny's thing.
No, this one was on mine.
This one was on your list. Okay, so it's probably just an error on the last one. I really liked the movie at the beginning because I think they debuted it as one episode. But after that, like I'm pretty out. You also get to see young Kanan Jarrus in that too. Pardon me,
Yeah, I think
Caleb.
that was a good way to get people invested right off the start. And I do remember watching the first 2 episode. I think it was like 70 minutes put together or something like that. So I think it was long enough to call it like a short movie, I think. And I do remember being like pretty invested. I liked the Bad Batch episodes of Clone Wars previous, which I guess we might get into a little bit later. Like I do remember being somewhat excited about this project, and by the time I had gotten around to watching it, some people had told me like this is a great show. But I remember it not being as hard to get through as season 2, hence why I got through season 1 and not season 2. But it gets to a point where there are some episodes that are like kind of character development episodes that are not toward the whole arc, and those ones are really, really poor episodes in my opinion. Like, I don't think these characters change and evolve through season 1 very much. So when they have character development type episodes, like, and you still, or at least I didn't feel like the characters were fully fleshed out. It was like wasting the episodes. Like, it was like, oh man, why am I watching, these guys hunt some sort of random animal on some random planet or something? Like, why am I watching this? There was so many scenes where it's like, why are we doing this? So that's how I felt about Bad Batch season 1 before trying to give Bad Batch season 2 a watch, and really died out there. So there was a strong start, which is why I would rate this one higher than the other 2.
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go ahead, Johnny. Sorry.
for this one, it's like you said, it started off high. It started off really good. Like that 2-episode drop at the start, that little mini movie was really good. Part of that was probably, if I'm being honest, looking back on it now, a good high percentage of it was just the Clone Wars rub. Having been more of that and seeing more of that, and seeing Order 66 as well, from another perspective, was a big deal because it's something that we hadn't really gotten a whole lot of at that point, and it's steadily, like you both said, it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse the further you got into the season. For me, anyway, like there was no. I made it through about 80. I can't remember how many episodes season was. Was it 12 or was it 20? But I think I watched every episode but 2 or 3, which passed my roughly 75% threshold for giving it a vote. And it just didn't I didn't care about the characters by the end. The only character that I had any real sort of emotional investment was Omega, and they hardly told any of her story in that first season. And it just one character is not going to keep my interest long term in what is supposed to be an ensemble cast. And maybe part of that is that they were all clones, so they all sort of were similar yet slightly different, and there wasn't really as like there was obviously differentiations between them, but they still sort of felt similar, and that might not have helped for me anyway. It just, yeah, it lost me and it never got me back.
The cynical side of me says one of the issues I have with this entire series is a Lucasfilm slash Disney tightening the wallet scenario. I feel like when you look at all the different animated series that they could do that are Star Wars based, there's about 200 of them that I could think of that I would take before the Bad Batch. But it feels like, oh, hey, let's take this one voice actor, put him in there as 5 of the 6 main characters on the show, and if you think he was getting paid 5 times the amount he was getting paid on Clone Wars, you're out of your goddamn mind, pardon my language. And let's do a series like that because we don't have to worry about anyone's availability. And the whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. But I remember specifically in season 1, there's this one episode fairly early on where they're trying to like sneak onto a ship to get off the planet, and they're going to get ID'd or something. And almost nothing that happens in the episode makes a lick of sense. And I'm just sitting here going, what the fuck am I watching? Like, am I really going to waste any more of my time on this? And
That's
the
early
answer,
season 1 too. That's
yeah,
not far into it. That's like episode 3 or 4 or something.
yeah. And I'm like, I'll give it a couple more episodes. And I did. I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm out. Forget this. So, Randy, any season 1 thoughts, man? I think you had this one the highest.
I did. I
Of the
think
Bad
part of it
Batch
for
show
me,
is just so we're clear.
yeah. I think for me, one of the reasons why this was so high is because I literally started watching it right after I finished season 7 of Clone Wars. So like they were the characters were very fresh in my mind, and once I saw, obviously the first couple episodes that they threw out there, getting to see Caleb Doom and Depo Palaba and kind of get to see exactly what they're saying happened and how, it really kind of struck me to like hit that nostalgia feel because Kanan is actually my favorite character in Rebels. So it really just kind of clicked with me, and I just kind of ran with it after that, regardless of how ridiculous some of those episodes were and how much Omega kind of annoyed the hell out of me at times. I was just invested, and I kind of just made sure I watched it weekly. But again, like I said, going back now, if I went back and rewatched it, everything, I can guarantee you that probably season 3 would be higher just because of the emotional stakes and the fact of just sitting there every episode. Is someone going to die? Are we going to see something different that we haven't seen in any of the previous seasons? And because I knew it was the final season. So with here, I think it got the gloss because of when I watched it versus the actual content itself.
I do think it has to be mentioned that like this is lowly rated here, but just for the people who are like, there are a lot of people who would rate this like way higher. I think we are a collection of people who did not rate this very high, but this show has its own fans. It's almost like if you just watch this, you'd be like, oh man, this that show must suck. They rated all 3 seasons of it fairly low. Like, I do know people who think the show is like, number 3 or number 4 on their list and very highly rated. So I think we might not be consensus here, but
Are they those same people that have every show at number one?
I don't know. I don't know. I do know that this show has its own fans who are very high on it, and it seems like we as a collective, maybe Randy's pushing it up a little bit, but the rest of us are kind of keeping it down. So just for the fans who are really big, really big fans of it, who are like, hey, you guys don't know shit about what you're talking about. It just happens our opinions are lining up this way, and to me, it's just kind of it is. It's like Randy said, if you were going Clone Wars to this, a lot of people probably hung around and were excited about it, and then we're like, oh wait, this is Clone Wars, but there's no Darth Maul, and there's no this guy who always comes back, and we don't get to see this person. And you're like, oh, okay, so it's like some of the boring episodes of Clone Wars. So, anyways, that has its own fandom, and I want to make sure they're somewhat represented here in our list, even though we got this down low.
I think you nailed it. So it's like the boring episodes of the Clone Wars. So thought that hit the nail on the head pretty good. Moving on to our last show that didn't make the top 10. And I think the conversation will get a lot more interesting from this point on. It is the Book of Boba Fett. The 7-part series that scored 39 of a possible 96 points, beaten out the Bad Batch Season 1 by 3 points, 0 first place votes, and the worst vote was 13th place. I'm going to kick things off here and to say this is a show that I need to go back and watch. I have not watched it since it first came out. So, and a lot of Star Wars has come out since then. So I do wonder if I would have had this higher on my list. Like when I think about, some of the things I don't like about the Acolyte and then go back to Book of Boba, the shows are probably about even for me. But because I've seen the Acolyte far more recently than I've seen Book of Boba Fett, I'd probably give it the nod. I think people wanted a different type of Boba Fett in this show. That seems to be what the majority of the fan base has said. But I kind of liked the show and for what it was. And, obviously it becomes a 2-episode Mando show there. Or, pardon me, a 1-episode Mando show and 1-episode Luke Skywalker show. I mean, that Luke episode is just mind-blowingly good. Fucking loved that. But also fan service 101. I got mixed feelings on this. I think for me, the biggest letdown about the Book of Boba Fett were the swoop bike guys that look like they're out of American Graffiti, which is like a cool nod to George Lucas, but probably doesn't. Someone else want to carry on?
I mean, I actually have this in like 7th or something like that. So obviously I'm higher than consensus for us. I thought a lot of the problems that people had with the show was that, there was a couple episodes of Mandalorian in it. There was some pretty goofy stuff in the finale with riding Rancors, and there was, lots. And yeah, I get that people wanted Boba Fett to continue to be a complete badass, but it told a different story that, his second chance at life, he, decided he wanted something different. And I mean, he's still trying to build up an empire, which is cool. I actually really liked it, and I hate Boba Fett. So I've always hated people who thought that Boba Fett was like the best character or whatever, because I was always like, man, he came around in Return of the Jedi and, fucking blew the big one and shot a giant range around Luke Skywalker and then fell in a Sarlacc pit by a blind guy. Like, I was always like very why the hell do people like Boba Fett? Which is funny because that I really like the Boba Fett show and the character that appeared in the show, and Boba Fett 2.0 is way better than Boba Fett 1.0 to me. So I thought it was great. I liked a lot of things. I didn't have any problems with the biker people that everyone hated as well. They were not super likable, but they were characters, and I didn't care that they were colorful. Or I get that everyone was kind of calling them like the Vespa riding Power Rangers and all sorts of really, stupid nicknames for them, and I get it. But like, it was one of those things I think people hung on to like a lot, and were like, what about these stupid characters? And you're like, they really don't do a lot. They're really not like, they don't impact the show a ton or anything like that. It's not like, not like they're the main characters destroying things. I really liked Chrysanthemum. I thought he was awesome, and I mean, he didn't do a ton or whatever, but he's a cool character, and waiting to see what happens. And the only thing I didn't like about this show is wait, sorry. Is this the one where Cad Bane came back? That was in this show, correct? No, that was or was that in Mando?
That was this show.
That was this show.
No,
Okay.
this is this one.
That was the part that I didn't like, because I really felt like that was like pointless. Like, to me, that was completely pointless, and it was just sort of a thrown in thing there. And not thrown in, it was thrown in and I didn't really enjoy it. Whereas like people were complaining about the Mando couple episodes being there, and I'm like, well, he ends up joining Boba Fett, so it makes sense to me. I get it. I like the show. I like I said, Boba Fett 2.0 is better than 1.0 to me. So that's, I think, the biggest statement I can make about this show.
Sorry, my dog was acting up, so I couldn't finish. I don't remember all the episodes, right? Because there's only 7 of them. I believe there were 7 of them. And so, because I haven't seen them since they first came out, memory's a little shoddy. But I feel like the only 2 episodes that I didn't care for were the one with the Vespa people, and then the finale, which is just Grogu comes back in the X-Wing by himself, and it's just them fighting a droid for the entire episode. It felt like a side mission in a video game, and then like they're all celebrating at the end as if they're best buddies the entire time, and it reeked of Disney to me. And but I seem to recall liking the rest of the episodes in the series and going, oh well, that was kind of a little bit of a waste.
This series,
I know at the start there was like a. Go ahead, Johnny.
This series for me is the sequel trilogy TV series. Individually, they might be good. Individually, the little mini arcs within them, you have the Boba arc, the Luke arc, and the Mando and Grogu arc. Individually, they might be good. Together, it is a mishmash of nothing makes sense. Together, it's not a cohesive series. It's the Book of Boba Fett. Half of the series, he's nowhere to be seen. And not just in a he's off screen, but the story still revolves around his story. No, he's off screen and not part of the story, because we're talking about Luke and his new Jedi Order, and we're talking about Grogu and his training and rejecting it and going back to Din. And it just, they have nothing to do with Boba Fett in such a way that being part of the series throws off the whole series. It's not a cohesive series. Individually, the parts might be good. Like the Boba story is okay. It might even be good in some parts. The Luke and Mando and Grogu stuff are good, and as like a season 2.5 of The Mandalorian was great. But the whole is just, it's the sequel trilogy. Individually, they're good movies. As a trilogy, it makes no sense. That's how I feel about the Book of Boba Fett.
What about if it was called The Book of Boba Fett and Other Short Stories? Would you love it?
I mean, at that point, you don't even need to call it The Book of Boba Fett.
Jesus.
Like,
I don't know if you guys read, but that's and other short stories, fit a couple other stories.
If they had named it something differently, like, I don't even know what, like, there are other names you could have chosen that would have sort of set you up for, this is going to be about multiple characters, multiple arcs within one sort of simultaneous time period. Then I probably would have been more okay with it. But as the Book of Boba Fett, doesn't make any sense.
Tales of Mandalore.
I mean,
Well,
You
That
could
I would
entitle
have
it
been okay
Bounty
with
Hunter
that.
Tales or something like
if
that.
they actually would have went to
Exactly.
Mandalore. Um,
Well, Tales of
What-
Mandalorian still would have worked.
well, we're on the topic of bad titles. Did anyone catch what other show adopted this title? No?
Mhm.
All right, I'll spoil it for you guys. Um, the one of the upcoming seasons of The Walking Dead this year will be titled
No.
The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. That is not a lie, an actual thing, an actual title. That whole mouthful.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I haven't cared about The Walking Dead since like season 3.
Just about there with Johnny.
I like the Rick and Michonne thing they did, but it was about 6 or 7 years too late.
As soon as they took what was a greatly written comic book and decided to just piss all over it and say, "This is a great story," we're not telling it in any way anymore. Go fuck yourself. I was done. I walked out the door.
Well, we know why they did that. Once again, it came down to the almighty dollar, and they bent, I forget the actor's name, but the poor kid who plays Carl over a fucking barrel. And
You mean the guy who
Mhm.
should have been the star of the second half of the series?
yeah,
That they
that
decided,
guy.
you know what, we're gonna kill you and keep your dad around.
Yeah.
Because that makes more sense.
And then the
instead
dad
of-
decides to leave a year and a half later. I want to go back home to my wife and kids. Anyways, that's a rant for a fandom.
That's a fandom haven episode.
For sure.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
is.
Randy, do you have anything you want to add here on Book of Boba Fett?
So obviously, looking at my list, I had this at the as the lowest one, basically because and I hate to say it, but it's not often this happens. But I'm agreeing with Johnny. It is a bit of a mishmash. I mean, if you took some of these episodes, like we took the Din stuff out and the Grogu stuff out, and we kind of pushed it to the side, or at least pushed it to a different season of The Mandalorian, then at least you could have more, maybe bring in some more cohesiveness with some of the story for Boba. But I didn't like what they did with Cad Bane, even though I'm pretty sure he's not dead. But it's just I didn't like the look of the character. I felt like they could have done a better job. We've seen other characters that have come across from the animated universe, and they look amazing. I mean, Zeb looked amazing, and then you have obviously they did Bo-Katan proper, and we saw in Ahsoka, we had a good Ahsoka, Hera. It's they could have done more with that particular character. Fennec Shan is a badass. That's one of my highlights of the season. I don't mind the story they told with Boba, but I feel like they could have done a better job of just keeping it as one cohesive narrative with Boba and Fennec versus having to bring in Din, Grogu, Luke, and all that stuff to kind of, to me, just as a way to bring eyes to the series, unfortunately.
All right. So
It's weird that they would have to do that, because what bigger name in Star Wars is there than Boba Fett? Like, even my hate for Boba Fett before this put aside, like, to have to put anyone else in a Boba Fett show to get any sort of eyes on it is insane to me.
let's break into the top 10 now. Coming in at 10th place, it's The Mandalorian Season 3. 41 of a possible 96 points, zero first place votes, and the worst vote was 12th place. And if I backtrack really quickly to Book of Boba Fett, it had a worst vote of 13th. Mando had a worst vote of 12th, meaning it's just a lot of mediocrity in both of the shows between basically everybody who voted on the list. There's cool moments in Mando season 3, and why can I not remember the actress's name? But like Bo-Katan carries this season.
Katie Sackhoff.
Katie Sackhoff, that's it. Thank you. She's excellent in this, but it became very apparent that the rumors of Pedro Pascal and Lucasfilm having a fallout were true. And I didn't get a chance to add that into Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett wasn't even a planned show. They intended Boba Fett to be a movie. And when it came time to redo Pedro's contract, Pedro wanted to be paid like the lead of the show, despite really only providing his voice and barely being on set. And Lucasfilm and Disney thought that was a bunch of bullshit. And there was a standoff for a bit, and eventually they settled on Book of Boba Fett as like a bridge, and then we came to this where he does not appear in the show. He did not film anything in season 3 of The Mandalorian, and I don't know, guys. Like, there's cool things in the show, but when you look at what season 1 and 2 did, this feels like the ugly stepsister spinoff of the first 2 seasons.
Unabashedly, for me, I was the 12th vote. I put it in 12th, which for me was the bottom of my list. Because, like I said, I didn't rank shows I hadn't seen at least 75% of, and I hadn't seen for several series. But this was the bottom of my list because when writing my list, I thought about it, and each show that I ranked, even ones I'd watched all of or ones that I'd only watched, 75 to 80, 90%, whatever, there were things that I remembered, things that stood out in my mind. This series, absolutely nothing stands out. Absolutely nothing. It is forgettable. I couldn't give you a synopsis of a single episode of season 3, which is tantamount to, I know I watched them because I went back and I actually pulled up my Disney Plus account to see which series had the blue bar of which episodes I'd watched so I could make sure that I was appropriately ranking things I'd actually watched. Saw the Mando season 3 with each episode with that blue bar underneath, said, you've watched this episode, and me going, I did? I don't remember. I'm reading synopsises like, that happened? That's a thing? I don't remember this. When? What? Huh? But I've seen the episode, and I have, no memory of watching it, which is why it was bottom of my list for shows I'd actually watched, because I couldn't remember. It probably would have ranked lower than some of the non-ranked shows, because I remember so little of it, and I actually watched it!
That's actually, you should have put it below the other shows on your list and be like, the other things could have had 1 minute of good stuff, and that's all you needed. So
That's the only thing I remember.
Do you mean that having Jack Black and Lizzo star in an episode didn't totally change your mind? And then, oh my God, help me out here.
you're not hating on Jack Black, are you?
I love Jack Black, but he was fucking awful in this. This was the worst use of him you could have had. And speaking of worst use, they also had, I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, about Christopher Lloyd?
That's it. Like, you get Christopher Lloyd and you use him like that? Oh,
See,
my
there you
God.
go. That's one of those things that I'm like, you're saying Christopher Lloyd. I'm like, wait, Christopher Lloyd was in this? I don't even
To be
remember that.
fair,
And he is like one of my top 5 actors. Like, if you put
The
Christopher
same
Lloyd's name
episode
on
as Jack Black and
anything,
Lizzo.
if you put if you put Christopher Lloyd's name on anything, I'm going to check it out because it's Christopher fucking Lloyd, and I think he is one of the funniest actors in Hollywood history. And I really don't remember at all. I couldn't even tell you who he played.
to be
At
fair, I
least
want to
Lizzo
be
and
fair
Jack
about
Black, I
this.
remember who they played.
I'm a really big fan of Christopher Lloyd as well. I went to go see him when he came to Fan Expo. I went to go see his panel. I'm a big fan of Christopher Lloyd as well. If you've seen Christopher Lloyd in anything in the last 5 years, he's not. There's not a lot you can do with him. I don't think. I think he's pretty old, and I don't think he has a lot. I think he's more of a throwing a token actor in there right now sort of thing. And that sounds sad to say, but I don't think it's because Christopher Lloyd was,
He's earned the status.
I think that, I think he's just at the point where you can put him in as a bit character and be like, we like Christopher Lloyd, so we're going to throw him in this whatever role. But yeah, I just want to add that in before I don't know if you want me to go on with what I actually think about the season, but you're on mute, Sean.
Thank you. One little stat here to add in is nobody had Mando season 3 higher than 6th. That was the highest vote it got. And the second highest vote it got was 9th. It gives you an idea on, at least for the 6 of us, what we thought the quality dip was after the first two seasons. And honestly, most of the fandom feels that way too. When you look online or talk to people in person, it doesn't hold up to the first two seasons at all.
My thing about Mando season 3 is that, like, personally, I one of the best things I like about Mando and season 1 and 2 and Andor, and like, I'm even kind of more excited than most people, I think, about Skeleton Crew as well, is that, like, I like my TV shows, my little my pieces of Star Wars that are not the movies, to be small little things, to be small scale little tales and little things I didn't know. Uh, Once you get, like, I don't think the Mandalorian should ever be put on a giant scale. He should never be fighting for the, like, in the top tier of Star Wars. I think he should be a a small scale character that you want to learn more about, and maybe brushes up against big characters like Bo-Katan. But I think they're putting them on a higher scale there that's not what I want to see. Like, and that's why you'll see
So
that Andor is
you're
very
out on the
high.
next Star Wars movies then?
Sorry?
So are you already out on the next Star Wars movies?
I will probably go see it, and maybe I'll like it, but it's I don't want him to be in that place where he's fighting Thrawn or whatever is going to happen. That's
Bad
coming up.
news for you.
I know, I've heard all that, and I'm sure that's what's going to happen, whatever. But like that, yeah, like, that's not what I want from this character. I like seeing, and once again, this is why I'm going to have Andor ranked really high, and you'll see later when we talk about it. Like, I like small scale type of stuff that you're just like, oh, I never heard of this. This is kind of cool. It takes place in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't affect the giant story of episodes, 1 through 9, in such a way where he's just kind of in the background. And I think that's why this season really fell off for me. There was a lot of kind of like who cares stuff about it, and I would rather have watched like most of an episode where he crosses a desert with Kuil, or he fights the giant horned rhino character. I forget what it's called. Like, I'd rather see that small scale stuff out of Mando, or him going to collect a bounty, and just how he gets mixed up in some of the larger parts of Star Wars, but remains low key. Otherwise, we should I don't know. Otherwise, we should already know about him. Like, you can't add to the big stuff, in my opinion.
All
Well,
right. Well,
see, the thing I was gonna say, the thing for me for season 3 is it felt less like The Mandalorian and more like an opportunity for Disney to show off Grogu and give him more moments so they could sell more merchandise. I think that was kind of my take on it, even though I did enjoy. Yes, I am in an X-wing. I did enjoy the series, the season, but I just felt like there was too many moments where it was set up for Grogu to do something to kind of give people that ooh and ah thing, and to sell Grogu merchandise. And to me, that's a problem. That to take a character and basically use it more so to just make money rather than actually tell a good story. And I think that's kind of because that total. Think about Grogu getting in the IG-88 and how much merchandise that sold, and how many gifs and memes you saw of him saying yes, 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 no, 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 and how that just kind of overshadowed a lot of stuff, especially like near the end when they're taking on Gideon and he's in the IG-88. Like, they could have done a better job of giving us just that complete gritty Mandalorian story that we've had in seasons 1 and 2, and they just didn't do it.
Bespin Bulletin and Make Star Wars were two of the first people to report that clearly when you see the end of Mando season 2, and then they reunite them in the next season of TV, like 6 episodes in, basically, or 7 episodes in, that was not the plan. That the plan was to keep them apart for a considerable amount of time, and Disney came down and said, no, you got to put them together. And hey, but that's what happens. If you're not your own independent company and you have people you have to answer to, you will never have the creative freedom that you want. And that's not to say everything Disney Plus does is shit. I was on here last week and I said, I don't think any of the Star Wars series are like horrible. I just have a high bar for what I want from Star Wars.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like any sort of musicians you like. Their best CD is normally their or best album is normally their first or second or possibly third album. And then, if they're a band that goes up to 6, 7 albums, like the last ones are probably not your favorite in most cases. There are exceptions, but like things get popular, and then there's too many money makers saying, no, you got to do that. No, we're making too much money with this Grogu stuff. So, if we can do this, we're going to really get some ratings. And it's like, but that's not the story I want to tell. And it happens. And nothing bigger than Star Wars and Disney, really. So,
we're going to race through the next three pretty quickly to save some time. Ninth place was The Acolyte, and we just spent more than the last 2 months talking about it. It also had 41 of 96 possible points. It got ahead of Mando season 3 because it had a higher vote than Mando season 3 had. Its worst vote was 14th place. Again, it was a fine show that could have been a great show. That will probably end up being a worse show if there's no season 2 payoff. Although while we're here, we should just announce there are spin-off novels coming and also sequel novels rumored, which probably gives you an idea where the confidence level is at a season 2 renewal.
I had it at my number 4.
Was it that high?
Number 4. Love the show. I actually really liked it. I want to watch it again. I'm actually really excited to watch it again. I thought it was an original story, and there wasn't a lot going. They weren't going to tell you that this character or this character were in it, and so there was not a lot of reason to watch it for people who only care about existing Star Wars characters. And the High Republic novels have a lot of backlash. There's a lot of people who like them, and they're still going on, so they're successful enough. But there's people who don't like them right away. And I thought the story was fantastic. I liked it a lot. There was more special moments in this show to me than most shows most of the Star Wars shows altogether. Certainly all the ones that we've already mentioned in this list. I think The Acolyte has more moments than probably all those shows combined to me. So
I just went back and looked at the graph, and you are in fact responsible for The Acolyte beating out Mando season 3. If it wasn't for your placement of it, it would have been one spot behind.
look at them, boys.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I would say if you want to check out our Acolyte thoughts, then check the streams that are on this channel, or go check Haddonfield and Beyond and search in the archives, and you can check out the first 6 or 7 episodes over there. Randy, Johnny, anything you want to add?
Not really. I feel like I said
like you said,
what I had to say
I
when we
agree
did
with
it.
you. If we don't, yeah, like if we don't get a season 2, it definitely drops. And that's I agree with you on that. So
All right, moving on. Coming in, so The Acolyte was 9th place, and Tales of the Empire was 8th place, beating out The Acolyte by 1 point. 42 of a possible 96 points, 0 first place votes, worst vote unranked. I liked the series, but I also didn't think it was near the quality of Tales of the Jedi. And throwing Thrawn in an episode, well, is cool. didn't do a whole lot to sway me. I appreciate the stories they told. Uh, I just 6 episodes at like, what are they usually between 12 and 15 minutes?
Yep.
It's not a lot of content to consume, so it's
Mhm.
hard to. And it's not me getting on runtime because I'm all for like the micro series, that Clone Wars micro series back in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, the one by the Samurai Jack creators. The first
The
season
Gendy
was
Tartakovsky show.
yeah, the first season was like all
Yep.
2 to 4 minute episodes, but the difference was you got 20 of them, and then the second season, I think, was like 5, 10, or 12 minute episodes. I just thought it was done much better than what we got with this.
That if that show was in this batch, that would be very highly ranked by me. By the way,
Me too.
I actually really like this series. I know it's up high in mine. I'm a big fan of Barasofi as a character as well, though. So I liked her 3 episodes better than the other 3 episodes, which were pretty good as well. Like I did like them. I did like the episodes on the other arc there, but I really like the Barris episodes. They added a lot to her character, and for anyone who was a big fan of that character and sort of wanted to see her point of view or her side after she obviously committed like treason against the Jedi, and I mean we knew her reasons, but we didn't really get to see the character after that do too much. So I really liked it, and I actually really like the fact that you can bang out this whole series in a couple hours, and just as much as the Tales of the Jedi one. I think I like it better than Tales of the Jedi as well. I'm pretty sure I ranked it higher than that. But I would very much welcome them to continue to do Tales of the whatever six. If they do Tales of Bounty Hunters and it's 6 15 minutes episodes, I'll actually be really excited for it because I like both the series, and yeah, the fact that it included Barris was the selling point for me, and that might not be for a lot of people, but I'm a big fan of that character. So Bueller.
I thought someone else would have something to say. I was in the middle of something.
Oh no,
Yeah, nobody.
you pretty much summed up everything my thoughts, so I didn't really want to take more time than needed for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't watched it yet, so that's on me.
Watch it. It's good.
Oh, I intend to.
All right, so Tales of the Empire in at 8th place. That brings us to Tales of the Jedi, 7th place. You'll notice a significant jump. So there's a big gap in terms of clearly what we thought the quality was of these shows. The 8th place vote had 42 points. The 7th place vote had 60 points. So an 18-point gap between the two places. 0 first place votes. Worst vote was 8th place. Everybody's vote was in and around that area. So, thoughts on Tales of the Jedi? Who wants to lead off?
I mean, I thought it was for what we got, the stories that we got, whether with Ahsoka and Dooku, both were very compelling. Both gave us some good backstory definitely for Dooku. I mean, my whole perception of Dooku changed because of Tales of the Jedi, and getting to understand kind of like why Qui-Gon was the way he was. Like there was just certain things about this that really truly helped me kind of understand the reason Dooku did what he did, but also just kind of where the Jedi were during the prequels. Like it just added so much, even though it was just 3 small episodes. You just get these ideas of like how much of a dick Mace Windu really is, and just how how powerful. We got to see Yaddle in action, which was absolutely probably one of my top moments from the series, even though she got done dirty at the end. But yeah, just the quality of the storytelling and the depth of the emotions that went into it. It just was out of all the animated series that are Disney Plus. This just definitely was my favorite one.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was fun seeing sort of that internal struggle in the Dooku arc, seeing Mace. No, seeing Mace. Wow. Seeing Qui-Gon going through and sort of
I mean, Mace
finding.
is in it. We did see
Well,
Mace in it.
yes, but I was referring to Qui-Gon, not Mace, specifically for the point I'm making. Is that, seeing Qui-Gon sort of being taught the Jedi Order from more of that place of, I don't want to say skepticism and doubt, but seeing the other side of the coin from the Jedi teachings helped explain why he was so sort of bullheaded and forge his own path when we see him again in episode 1. That I loved it, and seeing Dooku's path downward and trying to do what he thinks is the right thing and being prevented from doing it anyway, was so good and so much more fun. And then you got the Ahsoka arc, which fleshed out, her story, which obviously is becoming more and more important with her becoming such a bigger part of the overall narrative, with her getting her own series. I love that, and they were better than the Empire series because they were shorter, they were more fun. I just enjoyed them more.
Um, I had a lot of interest in the show because Qui-Gon is my favorite Star Wars character. He's my favorite Star Wars character. I do also like Dooku, and it went along with what it went along with what I expected and what I liked. I do like that there was kind of a morality tale in it, and it wasn't it did show the relationship between Dooku and Qui-Gon, and there's a neat moment where Dooku kind of acknowledges that Qui-Gon is the more even tempered of the two, and that I think he kind of almost respects Qui-Gon, and it's almost like you see him, like Qui-Gon, become uh, his own his own Jedi, and I think Dooku acknowledges that, which is really cool. I The only gripe I had with it is I hated the voice for Qui-Gon. It bothered me throughout the show. I don't know particularly why, but it just bothered me. I don't know. It's not like I didn't think it was a good accent, because Liam Neeson has a particular accent, and it seemed like it makes sense, but I don't know. It bothered me. I don't know if it bothered anyone else. I don't know if it bothered anyone in the comments or anyone who's going to watch this video, but it bothered me, the voice. But it was good. I didn't think it was as good as Tales of the Empire, but it delivered really great. And I didn't think the Ahsoka story was that interesting at all. I was actually very uninterested in everything. The only thing I can really remember from it is seeing baby Ahsoka, and that just
Felt like more of an old Disney fairy tale condensed down into 15 minutes that episode, or 17 minutes, whatever it was. Fun fact, though, the voice of Qui-Gon in that show is played by Liam Neeson and his son.
It's Liam Neeson's son?
For one of the episodes, and Liam Neeson in the other.
Okay, so it must have been the son's voice that I didn't like. And
probably.
I don't know. Whatever.
Right.
His son sucks then.
Let's move on. I'm not going to get too far into my thoughts of this one, because I think we're going to do something with this show in the not too distant future on this channel for content. But coming in at 6th place, that's a travesty even just saying that. 64 of a possible 96 points. 0 first place votes. Worst vote was 9th place. Is the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that I thought was good, but should have been fucking fantastic.
There's some things. There's some like can and talk about it forever. So I think it is probably best to save it for if we are going to do any sort of bigger sort of review of this
We're gonna rewatch
series.
the series.
Yeah, we're gonna rewatch the series and go into it. Then that's fine. And I think that's a good idea because there is lots of things to. I mean, beyond the fact that if this channel was this channel at that time, we could have done that episode by episode and do that. But now that we're running a new channel here of Star Wars, we can do that.
Johnny and I did it all right at fucking 4 o'clock in the morning.
Someone had the bright idea we're going to review it right after the episode launches at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to record at 4. And
I kind of remember you guys in that dumb idea. I remember being like,
I ended up having to
I'm
go
pretty
to work
sure I
right
remember
after
being
that.
like, fuck no.
You were the smart one. And I don't say that very often, like ever. In fact, I think that's the first time I've ever said that. And
It probably could be. It could be.
I feel dirty for having said
Unless you were talking about fantasy football, where I'm obviously the smartest of all the people you know.
No.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I currently hold both titles in that league, and I've done that before, so it's nice. I will say though that I did like this. I kind of feel the same way Sean does in that it probably could have been better in some ways, but oddly enough, if there's a little bit of a preview into what we say, the ways that I think it could have been better are probably way different than the ways that most people think it could have been better or did not like or whatever.
I'll say this and then I'll hand it over to Johnny and Randy. I thought they utilized Hayden Christensen poorly in it, considering how they utilize him in Ahsoka. And the production value is complete fucking garbage. And the reason why is they cheaped out on it. Fun fact, the lowest budget of any Star Wars live action TV series they've done to date by a considerable margin.
Wow.
Now I get that you're trying to make money off the Obi-Wan Kenobi name. You don't feel like you need the budget. But when you approve shots that are flat and two-dimensional and make backgrounds in Attack of the Clones look good, it's a problem. And it took me out of it completely at times. That being said, I don't have too much of an issue with the story they told. I kind of like it quite a bit. Just thought it was poorly executed.
Well, for me, this series made a podium. It was third, but it made a podium for me. Yes, there are some gripes and some negatives, but if you've been around the series long enough, you know that the production is one of the things that I don't knock as many points as you do for things like that, as long as it doesn't take me out of it. And there weren't nearly as many of those moments for me as there were for you, because you are, you're much more critical of that thing, and
because Sean is the way he is.
That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'm less into that. Unless it, something is glaringly obvious, it takes me out of it. I don't really notice the production issues until we're reviewing it and he points them out. And I'll be like, oh, you're right. That didn't look as good as as it could have. But it just, I really liked it. I enjoyed the story. I liked the things they did. Were there issues? Absolutely. And like Kieran said, I think my issues are different than other people's issues. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story, and I cannot say enough good things about Leia. I can't. I can't say enough good things about her performance in that series.
Agreed. Except for her writing. Needs some help.
Yeah. Except for her somehow being faster than a grown man with half the foot length, or half the stride.
Randy, what did you think of Kenobi, man? We've never really talked about this, and this is going to be one of the first series we do a rewatch for.
So, I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I loved. I thought the acting was really really well done. The story was good, but I felt like I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I felt like it could have been better. I think my biggest gripe for the entire series really was the Grand Inquisitor. But I think part of that also has to do with my love of Jason Isaacs in the role in Rebels. So I had that bias going in. Not that Rupert Friend's a bad actor by any shape of the imagination. He's
You didn't like his
been in
head,
some
did
really
you?
good series. But it's just that was like my biggest issue that I think I really ultimately had was really him. I'm going to assume during the rewatch, considering all the times we griped about production values and whatnot, about the Acolyte and what we're doing with House of the Dragon, I'm going to start noticing these little things because of you. And I'm going to start cursing you at this point because I'm going to be like, damn it, why did you have
just
to ruin that for me?
You wait till they stare at a flat wall, a flat screen that's supposed to be this jaggedy mountain edge or door or the gate that Kenobi and Leia could walk around but choose not to.
That's I don't know.
Yeah, that
Probably
part
a
was the
Sean
one.
problem.
I sat there and went, wait, what?
You know, the one
Even
thing
I
I
was
feel
kind of like,
justified on is
wait a minute.
it
What are you
does seem like
doing?
most of the fan base has decided that, yeah, you know what? Maybe giving that show the lowest budget of all your shows probably was not the best idea.
That was probably. I mean, I think that's very surprising to hear for me. That seems like a really dumb move.
The
It
Acolyte
didn't affect
cost
it for me
more
very
than
much, but
the Acolyte cost more than twice that, $100 million more.
they could have given some of that money from the
Doesn't
Acolyte. I
show.
think over.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty crazy to me, and you know, I guess we'll get into the show later. So I don't think we
For
should
sure.
spend too much more time on it. I
No,
think
for
you're right.
sure. I think we're looking at that for probably early September to do a 6-episode rewatch of that series. We got D23 coming up, and clearly Star Wars is going to do something there. I have no idea what. Now moving on to 5th place. Thank you very much, Johnny. We have Andor, 72 of a possible 96 points. 2 first place votes. Hey, look at that. A series that had first place votes. And the worst vote was unranked. Don't worry, we're
Wow,
gonna
somebody
rewatch
didn't
this
watch
too.
this show?
I
What
will
a piece
say
of shit.
I will say this about Andor. I did not want this show. Did not want it at all. Felt there was no purpose for it, no need for it. Had zero excitement going into it, and yeah, it just someone else can.
Well, that someone else can't be me,
I
because as we've established, I didn't watch it.
I was the one. I was the one who wanted this show. And we forever ago got the announcement of this show, and I think we've said this before, so I won't go on about it. But I was like, yes, this sounds awesome, and it's because I like Diego Luna, and because I knew I was going to get a Star Wars story that probably wasn't going to involve Jedi and Sith, and Darth Maul wasn't going to come back from the dead or something, and like I, all this. All the crazy fandom service stuff I knew I was not going to get in this show. So I was very excited about it. And I don't think there's not very much anything you can think of that's just random fan service in this show, I don't think. I'm sure Sean will prove me wrong at some point and point out something, but I liked the character. I really liked Rogue One. There's a lot of people who like that movies, and I'm surprised that the love for that movie didn't carry over to this show. But I think it's the highest product. It's like the highest value story, the highest it's very realistic. There's not a lot of, I don't know how much green screen is used in this, but it seems like zero. I know they built a bunch of big sets for this, like specifically avoiding that. And I just thought it was a fantastic story. It would have been a really great story even if it wasn't Star Wars, but you felt and knew that you were in the Star Wars universe during it. There was lots of crates and things like that that, had Star Wars names on them. There was lots of mention of the Empire, and it couldn't have taken place somewhere else. But it was a great story even outside of Star Wars, and I thought it was great. I ranked it. I'm one of the first place votes. I think the other one is Sean, and it's ranked number one, and I'm very excited to see more. And if they could continue making shows like this, then Star Wars would be even more exciting to me, and that's why I'm kind of excited about Skeleton Crew, even though it's getting a lot of negative.
Oh God, yeah, that'll be
Right
next week.
now,
That'll be next week's episode. It's getting more than negative. We should hold our breath about seeing it at all at this point.
I've heard that. But that's another show that's probably going to, I think was going to be kind of an interesting project like this one. So I was like, kind of thinking it would be cool, but yeah, who knows what actually happens now. Anyways, Andor, great show. Number one for me. Who is next?
I'll
Well, I
finish
guess
up
that'll
on
be
where I
me.
was. Sorry, Randy. I'm going to cut you off here so I can finish up before my dog loses it again. Didn't want
Okay.
the show. Was not eager for it. And it blew me away. Johnny gave up after 2 episodes, which I understand. He should have sat through episodes 3 and 4. Really starts to pick up. It's a properly told story. You actually get a properly told character arc, and not just from Cassian. And Kieran mentioned the production quality. If all Star Wars had that production quality, you wouldn't have me on here bitching all the time. It's just, Tony Gilroy's allowed to go do Tony Gilroy things the way he saved Rogue One. And can't wait for season 2. There's no better show that has better acting in it for Star Wars. No better show with better production quality. No better show with long-term storytelling over the course of a season, anyway, than this. And hey, guess what? It has appropriate length episodes too. Nails it on all fronts for me. Number one for me too. Oddly enough, Kieran and I agree. Wow.
So, like you, Sean, I didn't really want this because I'm like, why do I want a show about a character that I already know how how it ends for him? Now, granted, we could say the same thing about Anakin and not get the prequel trilogy, but it's just the idea that you didn't ask for this. No one asked for this. And after sitting down and actually really just watching it and getting invested in the character and seeing just like the brutality, seeing the brutality of the Empire taken up to a new level, something we hadn't seen before. Like it was done proper. Like we finally got to see just how violent and aggressive the Empire was when it come to just about everything. Obviously, one of my favorite characters ended up being Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis, and I was heartbroken with what happened with him when Cassian escapes. So, there was that whole story arc. You had that roller coaster of emotions, and to me, that's always a good sign for any story. If you get happy or sad or pissed off, or if it makes you feel, to me, that's definitely the mark of a great story. And we had great acting, great story. The production value was through the roof for this. Great music. It hit on all fronts. And granted, there were a couple other shows for me that obviously were higher up on my list than this, but still, it's definitely right up there, I feel like it should be a little higher, but I get it. It's the collective. Not everybody is gonna. I'm sure if Johnny had watched all the way through, it probably would be higher.
We'll get
the
him all
problem is
before
just
Andor 2.
some people just can't watch like a properly told long form story, and they're Philistines, and that's the problem. They're like Johnny. They just like garbage.
Poor Kino Loy, though. His ending is
Yeah.
a very Christopher Nolan-esque type ending on that one.
Yep.
But let's carry on here. Number 4, Ahsoka. I was pleasantly surprised to see it this high on the list. 74 of a possible 96 points, 0 first place votes. The worst vote was 9th place. Johnny, you didn't have anything to say about Andor, but my guess is he has something to say about this.
Well, obviously, this one just missed my podium. It's in the place I had it on my list, so I got this one right, I guess, according to the collective. I enjoyed it so much. You know, like it may not have gotten my number 1 rank, but it's probably the one that I'm most excited for the future of, obviously. Um, it told to me, a perfect story. Not perfect is probably too good a word, but it told an excellent story. That's a better choice.
This just in, Ahsoka's better than Empire, according to Johnny. Facts.
No, it's like that 9.5 story arc. Empire is like a 9.8 story arc. It just, I loved it so much. The acting in it was amazing. It told a story that I didn't expect to be what it was, and I had so much fun watching it every week. Enjoyed every episode. I don't really have anything negative to say about it, and maybe if I'd have rewatched all these series while voting, it might have gotten higher. At the very least, it might have knocked Kenobi off the podium. I don't know, but there's so much about it that I'm excited for what comes next. Not just season 2, but in the movies, and you can tell the effort and care that Filoni puts into his projects versus some of the other people who don't live and breathe Star Wars, for lack of, better phrasing, where Filoni does. You have that depth in it that you don't have in other series. The acting was off the charts, and it did something that, for a lot of people that didn't expect it to do, made them like Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden Christensen.
That's my
Obviously
favorite
not
part
Kieran.
about it. Kieran is obviously a huge Hayden fan now after all these years. He has seen the light, and honestly, kudos to Christensen, though. He did as much as he could with the material he was given, and I don't know how I would compare it to Revenge of the Sith, but he's
Isn't that
obviously...
always the case?
That
It
you've
was
seen the
just
light? Yes, you
He,
eventually come
he
around.
did the maximum what was given to him. Everything that's given to him is a piece of shit. You know what? Go on. I'm not doing it today, Sean. I'm
it,
not
it was
doing
just
it.
it was just really nice seeing Hayden delivering well-written Star Wars dialogue, because that's something we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, I mean, his episode's obviously a highlight, too. And say what you will, Hayden doesn't use stunt doubles very often unless it's, falling around and shit. And the dude has an art when it comes
He
to
doesn't have
wielding a
anything else
lightsaber.
to do.
He did in this series. Weren't you paying attention? Uh, um, this is the one thing this series has going for it, though, guys, over some of the other ones, is you're getting more. You're getting season 2, and that it's going into the movies that are coming. So it's got a little more to bite onto than the rest of it. The only other point I'll make, because I think we're going to do this one pretty soon after we do Kenobi, is, obviously losing Ray Stevenson sucks. Ray Stevenson was a great actor. Um, Recasting that role is going to be a pain in the ass. They're actually doing it as we speak. Um,
You,
and I hope they choose wisely, because I thought that he was in a series that had Thrawn and had Anakin, he was my favorite part of the series.
you know what I saw today that was interesting is I was watching some of the big Comic-Con stuff, and they had the actor who plays Hopper in Stranger Things, and someone commented on the video like he would make a good replacement, and I was like, that might be okay. I forget what the actor's name is. Johnny, you know,
David Harbour.
Hopper in Stranger Things.
Yeah, he plays
David
Black
Harbour.
Widow. Yeah, David Harbour. That's it. I've heard his name.
Yeah.
I've heard Liam Cunningham. I've heard Ian Glenn, and I've heard Liev Schreiber. Which, funny enough, I think Johnny was the first person I heard that out of, and then other
I
people
love
started to
Liam
bring it up.
Schreiber. I think he can do anything, so that would be a good one. Anyways, back to Ahsoka the series.
This is where we lost
Sorry,
our podcast virginity with Randy. Randy, what did you think of this?
So this ended up actually being number 2 on my list. So this was for me. This was just my faith in Filoni based on all the stuff I'd seen him do, getting this chance to tell his story with essentially his baby, because I mean he is the one who created Ahsoka. So it was done so well, and like you, Sean, Balin Skull was such an amazing character from right off the rip too. It wasn't even just didn't even know a damn thing about him. We just knew that he was a former Jedi, and from episode 1, he captured all of us. Like his
Hell, that
presence,
first scene, man. with the New
yeah.
Republic soldiers.
I mean, his presence, the stature, the everything, and the fact that those are some big shoes to fill for whomever gets recasted, and I hope they just take their time with it, because I'm excited for season 2. It was great getting to see a live action character Rebels for the first time, minus Zeb since we got him in Mandalorian, but it's to get Hera and Sabine and Ezra all in live action for the first time. I thought that was just really well done. And the story was great. The fact that we're getting more is great. Thrawn was more of what I think we were all hoping he would be versus what we got in Rebels. I mean, obviously you guys had read the books, so I'm hoping that Thrawn kind of gave that performance you guys were kind of looking for. But ultimately, yeah, it's such a great series. They did a great job with the flashbacks. Delving more into kind of the spiritualistic side of the Force, which is something George Lucas had always done. Kudos all around. I'm excited for what we get when we get more.
I thought Lars Mikkelsen did whatever he could do with the role. The problem was when did he come in? Like episode 6? Like almost halfway through episode 6. So at that point you have 2.5 episodes to work with. It's not a lot of time, and you still and it's not his story. But when he was on screen, yeah, I felt it. He felt like Thrawn, and I felt like it paid off from those novels. Actually, I know we got to get moving here, but Kieran, I have a question for you, man. You're the Qui-Gon guy. Did you feel like Balin in this show is what Qui-Gon would have been if he had turned?
That's a very good comparison, and I mean, I think pretty much everything that Randy said about Balin Skull, Ray Stevenson's. Like, I said this before, he felt like a displaced character from Game of Thrones. Like, he would have been a great character on Game of Thrones, which is obviously high praise from, someone who does a Game of Thrones podcast as well. I thought he was a great character, and yeah, he just had a great presence. I can't really expand too more on what Randy said, but I had this show a little bit lower. I think I had it like 6th or 7th. To me, this show had great characters. It was almost like the Suicide Squad, the first movie, to me, like where I liked all the characters, and yet, like, I don't know, something I didn't really care for the story. I didn't like how they had Sabine all of a sudden be Force sensitive and be able to be a Jedi, and I don't know. I felt like that was a really, I didn't like it at all. I don't know. I honestly thought that whole idea was pretty dumb. And I did like the actress who played her. I thought that was fine. I just thought the arc was dumb. I'm not overly I don't think that Thrawn was great. I thought he was good. I liked Ezra in it, but like, I don't know, the story just, I don't know, I wasn't too interested for a lot of it. And I thought most of the characters, or all of the characters, were done really well. So once again, it just kind of boils down to the writing. It's almost the same problem I had with the Bad Batch, where I thought the characters were good, and I thought they would get to some good storytelling with those characters, and didn't really care for the way the story went. But because I liked all the characters and because I wanted to see where they went, I watched the whole thing, and it was okay. It was middle of the road on this list for me. So
Well, there you have it. Ahsoka comes in at 4th place. Probably should have been 5th place, but yeah, we have Ahsoka at 4. Moving on to our podiums. Uh, Clone Wars Season 7, 78 of a possible 96 points. A first place vote, which I find absolutely wild, and a worst vote of 10th place. Johnny, you seem to really like this show, so why don't you lead us off?
Well, I gave it the first place vote.
I know, you're fucking nuts.
I'm okay with that. It just, for me, it was Star Wars before Disney, and it was that it didn't lose any of its spark of what had made Clone Wars great. Um, it I enjoyed the stories. I mean, sure, the Bad Batch arc set us up for failure in the future, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I had so much fun watching it, and it felt. The spoiler alert.
what?
You not see what's on the screen?
Yeah, what the fuck is Sean doing?
Wrong slide. My bad.
Who's the producer here?
Cat's out of the bag, folks.
Well, that's the end of the show.
No, I mean, it's just like I said. To me, it felt like Star Wars before Disney again, and I needed a little taste of that when it came out. Because well, obviously Disney has left a lot to be desired in its original Star Wars offering. So, getting that, completing the stories, which, again, always felt like they'd sort of just dropped because of the abrupt ending they were forced at the time. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It, it had everything that made the classic Clone Wars great, and I love the stories. Even the Bad Batch arc was good. They just didn't follow it up well because within the context of a Clone Wars season, having a series about a bunch of, having a little arc about a bunch of clones was perfectly normal and didn't feel out of place, unlike their own series, which, the shine wore off the apple really fast, as we established earlier.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. That first arc has Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu. I think Ahsoka appears for the first time in it. Like, forgive me, but it's okay. It's passable. The last arc might be the best animated arc of Star Wars storytelling that there is. That takes place side by side with Revenge of the Sith. I thought that was badass. The middle arc is one of the worst arcs of Star Wars storytelling I've seen in animation ever, and why I had this significantly lower than first place.
Yeah, for Clone Wars, for the final season, one of the things I liked about it the most is, like you said, that last arc. It gave us one of the. I mean, to me, one of the coolest things is having everything play out during Order 66, and you're hearing, Obi-Wan's message, and you get to see one of the most amazing animated duels ever with Ahsoka and Maul. And I know we'll hit on that in our duel rankings when we pull that out. But yeah, we get to, and the thing is, we get to see kind of where characters end up that we, like with the Rebels, we get to see like Maul, where Maul is, and Ahsoka showing up. But this kind of fills in some of the information that we just didn't have of what happened to these two during the Clone Wars. I will say one of the more, I wouldn't say haunting, but just kind of powerful shots is Vader returning to the planet and picking up Ahsoka's lightsaber. And to me, that was that shot, and just the power of that scene, that kind of hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. But ultimately, this was just this was just some good animated Star Wars TV, and that's one of the reasons why I love it.
Kieran?
Darth Maul sucks. So this show, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit about Dave Filoni and his fucking cowboy hat? That's all I have to say.
Them's fighting words, good sir.
Well, I was about to say that you and I had been agreeing a fair amount today, but go fuck yourself. How dare you? All right, let's move on. I already spoiled it. So
Season 7 was just Filoni playing with his little toys. That's all. That's all.
We'll do 2
My
and 1
favorite
here.
is so bad. My second favorite Darth Maul. They're gonna fight each other.
We'll do 2 and 1 here since I spoiled it. Second place was Mandalorian season 1, 86 of a possible 96 points. Interestingly enough, 0 first place votes, and yet the worst vote was 4th place, meaning everybody had it either second, third, or 4th, which is pretty wild. And then coming in at first place was The Mandalorian season 2 with 88 of a possible 96 points, 3 first place votes, and a worst vote of 6th place.
Who the hell put it at 6th?
Interestingly enough, it has a worse vote than Mando season 1, but the 3 first place votes ended up outpowering that. Let's just talk about the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian in general. I'll keep my thoughts short here because we got to wrap up. It desperately breathed life back into Star Wars for me. I think 1 or 2 episodes of this came out before Rise of Skywalker, which probably made me even more critical of Rise of Skywalker. Piece of shit film. I feel bad for ever saying half the shit I said about The Last Jedi after seeing that film. I still need Ryan to forgive me for that, although there's still some bad decision making. Mando's stuff. The way they introduced Grogu and used Grogu in season 1, which is kind of sparingly, is the right way to go about it. It's dark, it's gritty. Pedro Pascal's fantastic. He's on set more, under the mask more. And then season 2, obviously, we get Bo-Katan, we get Ahsoka, we get the big Luke moment, you get Boba Fett, so it gets a little cameo. I don't even want to say cameo because other than Luke, the other roles aren't cameos. But like they're, other than Andor, for me, they're the 2 best seasons of Star Wars TV content there are. And it's crazy to see how far Mando season 3 fell off from these 2.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, we got exactly what they first promised with season 1, and it's being dark, gritty, just that whole just him being a bounty hunter, going about his way in the galaxy, and the action pieces were well done, and like ultimately the story, and of course for anybody who are deep in the lore, to have the way that Moff Gideon is introduced in season 1, it's that you lose your damn mind moment. And then of course season 2 said, here, hold my beer, with bringing in Luke at the very end with one of the most amazing, I guess you can call it the hallway scene, since we got one with Vader in Rogue One. Now I guess Luke had to one up it with taking out all the Dark Troopers the way he did. And then, I'm not going to lie. I shed some tears over that, because damn, that felt good just to have Luke back and to see what they did and how he was used. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why it was ranked number 1. But for me, ultimately, just it was a great story. They didn't scrimp on any of the details. They didn't hold back on production. The music was set up perfectly. We got some great character development all the way around, with some solid emotional moments, especially Din and Grogu at the end there. Like, if you didn't practically have to hold back some tears from that, something's wrong with you. It's one of those things where this is what we were always expecting, what we wanted out of The Mandalorian. And you're right, season 3 just kind of dropped the ball, but at least we have seasons 1 and 2. And I know we're going to get more of Mandalorian and Grogu, but just got to change the damn movie name and we're good.
In retrospect, I will add this: if there was ever a time to recast a character, that was probably it. In that moment, right there, take the hood off. There's your new Luke Skywalker, and now they're kind of caught in this CG mess.
Very true.
So I actually had Mando season 1 higher than 2. But there were 2 and 3 for me. So, we're not really deviating too much from the plan if everybody else thought that 2 was better than 1. I just think that, the way The Mandalorian starts out, the first scene in the first episode, like him, I can bring you in cold, I can bring you in warm, that sort of stuff. Seeing his ship just kind of like hastily, like, it's kind of a beat up ship, and it's got all this, at one point you can see all the people he has frozen in carbonite in there, and like, he's a badass. He's a badass gunslinger. He's collecting bounties. He's also like, very, very much mentions that this is the way of the Mandalorians. He's not just like a money greedy guy who likes killing people. It's part of his religion. You find out about, the whole thing about being a foundling, and you find out so much about Mandalorian culture. If there's any sort of like ding on it, a lot of people were saying, it's a lot of side quests. But I purposely, I thought that was great because we were just learning more about Mandalorians, which is something that we, have heard a lot in games and in whatever. But I think we got more about Mandalorian culture from this show than anything. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought season 1 was a little bit better than season 2. I like the Luke moment, and of course I freaked out. Just like everyone else probably did. I actually like Gina Carano's character, as well as having Rosario Dawson be Ahsoka, and the season 1 and season 2 are very close for me. But I just remember, like, I just kind of want whatever comes next for The Mandalorian to go back to the scale of season 1. And of course, it never will. But I wish it never kind of escaped that sort of. I wish you went on more interesting tales and things like that. But I don't. I wish that everything was kind of the same as season 1 going forward. That being said, season 3 was still good and watchable and fun. But season 1 and 2 were far better quality to me than season 3. So, and apparently the movie's going to piss me off. I don't know. It's probably not going to piss me off because nothing pisses me off, but except Hayden Christensen. That's the only thing that pisses me off in this world.
Johnny, finish us off with some Mando thoughts, man. We can close out and move on.
Mando 1 was I had it second on my list. I had second on my list. Like you said, it brought a breath of fresh air into Star Wars at a time when it needed it. It needed that injection of hope that Star Wars could be Star Wars again. It brought that storytelling, the look, the landscape, the magnitude of story, all of those things made The Mandalorian Season 1 a great season. The performances were great, the casting was excellent, and you got to feel for the world in a time period where we hadn't really felt the world, of Star Wars. It was untapped. It was an era where we didn't know much in the current canon, and it was fun filling in that gap and starting to get some storytelling going on in there with characters that were enjoyable and fun and you got to like. Season 2, on the other hand, I'm the guy. I gave it the 6th place vote, and I stand on it because season 2 is where they lost the plot for me. It's where you had a perfect ship, and season 2 is nobody noticing the iceberg on the Titanic, and you slam right into it. Because season 2, while individually the parts were great, the story was good, the episode, the plots, the action pieces, the set pieces, all those things were good and even great. But the problem is season 2 is the season where it lost the plot, and to me, it felt like the first time where Disney put their finger on the scale. And in the TV world, which they've done a lot more since then, but it was the first time they put the finger on the scale and said that Yoda guy, that Baby Yoda thing, it's moving a lot of dollars for us. I think maybe we should be a bit more about that guy and a little less about the guy whose face we never see. Maybe he should be a bit more important to this universe, and let's push him. Let's push that character because he's making us the dollars, not Din. And it became more and more about Grogu and less about the Mandalorian. And it just, I don't know. Din in season 2 felt so different from the Din in season 1 that it just, I didn't I I didn't enjoy it as much. I didn't like it as much. I watched it, obviously, and there were great parts within it, but overall it became too much about the side character. This was like a season about Boo Boo and calling it series Yogi Bear. And sure, that's great for some people, but I'm watching Yogi Bear because I want to see Yogi Bear. And yeah, he was in
I
every
want to see
episode,
Boo Boo.
and he was a part of
Hey,
the
Boo
whole
Boo.
thing. But every action revolved around Grogu in such a way that it took me out of it more and more because this guy was just an unabashed bounty hunter. It's going after the next paycheck. Where's the paycheck here? What's the thing he's striving for? And yeah, you could say, it was about doing the right thing. It's about being a good person. He formed a bond with Grogu and all those other things you could say, but it just, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first season, and for that, it fell down because it felt more, it felt less associated with what had come before it. That it just knocked it down the rankings for me. I knocked it down hard.
Well, what a positive note to end this one on. Really quickly to recap here for everyone. 16th place was Star Wars Visions Season 2. 15th was The Bad Batch Season 3. 14th was Star Wars Vision Season 1. 13th was The Bad Batch Season 2. 12th was The Bad Batch Season 1. 11th was the Book of Boba Fett. 10th was The Mandalorian Season 3. 9th was The Acolyte. 8th, Tales of the Empire. 7th, Tales of the Jedi. 6th, pains me to say, Obi-Wan Kenobi. 5th, should have been first, Andor. Ahsoka was 4th. Clone Wars Season 7 was 3rd. And as we just talked about, Mando Season 1 2nd. Mando Season 2 1st. I agree with a lot of Johnny's points on Din changing. I think part of that's becoming a father figure type character and feeling a little more Disney-fied too, the more that they go into it. But anyways, that is going to do it for this episode of The Legacy of Star Wars. For Johnny and Randy and Kieran, I'm Sean, and we'll see you next week in a galaxy far, far away.